The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Saturdays or Sundays, SOR Media, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the expressed written consent of SOR Media is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised. Are you experienced? Then come own the night with us.
Little brother has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all
Station atop the mountains of British Columbia, live from SOR headquarters. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong.
You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spaced Out Radio on iTunes. You can follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram at Dave Scott SOR, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio.
Brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott.
I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized.
It's Thursday, February 22nd, Friday, February 23rd, if you're on the East Coast or across the pond, and this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a great day and night. I am your host, Dave Scott, live from the Great White North, in the Caribou region on top of the snowy mountains of central British Columbia, right here at SOR headquarters. We are 150,000 strong, nightly on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, on the United Public Radio Network 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on The Fringe FM, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. Now, we're all over social media. You can follow us live right now on periscope.tv. We are on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for our archives. Listen to us on iHeartRadio in the United States. TalkStream Live. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download and subscribe to our shows on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We also have a GoFundMe account going on right now. GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. That's GoFundMe.com/We Own the Night. If you want to help us build a brand new studio here so we can get going on more terrestrial radio stations. On our website, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store, read up on the encounter online. You can also check out my latest blog there as well, or watch great videos from UFO seekers and Contact TV and so much more. You know, in my 3.5 years of doing this show, we have talked a lot about UFOs and the government, especially in the United States, about this topic. And although it's all speculation for the most part, for me, it always seems to come down to one potentially crucial piece of history when it comes to ufology. That is, did President Dwight Eisenhower meet with extraterrestrials and bypass Congress to sign the Greada Treaty, trading people and animals for experimentation by aliens in exchange for technology? Some in the field of UFOs, including Ike's great-granddaughter, Laura Eisenhower, believe this is to be true. Dr. Michael Salla, an expert in exopolitics, his website, exopolitics.org, believes it as well. He's wrote an incredible dissertation on this subject, and tonight we learn if the Greada Treaty really happened, and has it been renewed. Dr. Salla will be with us the first 2 hours. In hour number 3, I am very curious about getting your opinion on this. So I'm going to open up the phone lines to you, and I want you to tell me whether or not you think this treaty really happened. That number for later on in hour 3 is 1-702-302-4556. I will give it out again later on in the show, but first we welcome in Dr. Michael Salla for his second appearance on Spaced Out Radio. Dr. Salla, thank you so much for coming back on this show. I think this is an important topic that a lot of people in the field of ufology overlook.
Thanks for having me on the show, Dave. Yes, I do agree. This is a really important topic.
I would like to learn from you, Dr. Salla, how you came across this information and decided that you needed to look into this.
It happened for me back in 2003. At the time, I was still affiliated with American University. I had been an assistant professor, and my specialty was actually teaching international diplomacy, conflict resolution, and so I was very interested in this idea that there had been secret diplomacy that had been conducted between President Eisenhower and extraterrestrials. And I first came across it in a book by William Cooper, Behold the Pale Horse, and also in the testimony of a whistleblower, Phil Schneider. And as I did more of my own research into this, I found out that it was very consistent with what others were saying, that very early on in President Eisenhower's administration, he met with different extraterrestrial delegations and then eventually reached an agreement. And that agreement has been referred to as the Greada Agreement by Cooper and Schneider.
When you first heard about this, did you think it was just way too sci-fi to try and even comprehend, like most of us do?
Well, it actually made a lot of sense. I mean, if we are being visited by UFOs, and I think when you look at all of the data that had been accumulated in the 40s and 50s, there were people writing in that era, like Donald Kehoe. I think Frank Tully was another, Frank Scully. There were a number of people who looked at a lot of the sightings, and these were well grounded. I mean, there were Air Force pilots, there were Navy pilots reporting on these UFOs. There were photographs, there were radar tracking. So there was a lot of evidence that we were being visited by these flying saucer craft that had extraordinary propulsion systems, that these could basically defy the laws of the laws of inertia. In other words, you would have an object doing right angle turns, traveling at kind of like hypersonic speeds, and that's something that with our current technology back then especially just couldn't be done, because the laws of inertia would mean that doing a right angle turn at some kind of hypersonic speed, you would just be crushed. So we were talking about some futuristic technology, and so that immediately raised the scenario that we were being visited by extraterrestrials. And so all of the data pointed to us being visited, and so that would then lead to the next step, which would be, well, had we met the visitors? And I think a lot of people logically would kind of like, reason that, well, if the government, if the military were monitoring these craft, monitoring the landings, there were a lot of contactee cases, makes a lot of sense that, the government themselves would have been interested in having contacts with these, with the occupants of these flying saucer craft. So I think it's, when you look at all of the data, it does kind of follow that, yes, meetings did eventually happen, and that as a result of those meetings, eventually agreements were reached.
Did this all result after the Roswell and San Augustine crash, where we actually had bodies from these beings and potentially beings still alive? Is that what caused all of this?
Well, that's a really kind of fascinating question. There was a document that just was released early last year. It's a Defense Intelligence Agency document dating from 1987, and it basically lays out the history of the extraterrestrial phenomenon, and basically it refers to those early crashes, and in particular it focuses on the Aztec crash, Aztec, New Mexico in 1948, and this document basically says that as a result of that crash, diplomatic relations began with the occupants of one of those craft. That there were several beings that survived the crash at Aztec. There were a few dead ones, but some survived, and the survivors basically laid the foundation for eventual diplomatic relations, and that the extraterrestrials basically arrived. This is another group arrived to pick up this survivor, or one of the survivors of that crash, and took them away, and then formal diplomatic relations began soon after. So, we're talking 1948, and we're talking about a crash, we're talking about extraterrestrials being recovered, we're talking about the civilization that basically, like, you had a rescue operation where the peers of the crashed extraterrestrial arrived to rescue him, and in the meantime, the groundwork had been laid for future negotiations. So this document is an important one because it corroborates, what other people have been saying, whistleblowers, as I mentioned earlier, like William Cooper, Phil Schneider, and others, that agreements, diplomatic relations began very early on in the 40s and the 50s.
A lot of people who are skeptical of this, Dr. Salla, will say there really isn't a lot of proof out there that this treaty is more than just hyperbole and the creation of some very, very exquisite sci-fi minds. Is there any definitive proof that this treaty actually took place?
Well, what we have the testimonies of these eyewitnesses, Phil Schneider, William Cooper, and there were a number of others that were involved in the meetings at Edwards Air Force Base, at Holloman Air Force Base. And this is one of the things that skeptics often, ignore, is that eyewitness testimony is evidence. It's admissible in a court of law. So when people say, well, where's the evidence? An eyewitness is evidence. Even though people can't produce the craft or material from the craft, can't produce photographs, or can't produce any kind of like classified documents, which are all in themselves forms of hard evidence. Still, the fact that you got not just one, not just two, but multiple eyewitnesses saying that they had access to classified documents. I mean, for example, William Cooper, he served on the briefing team for the commander of the Pacific Fleet. William Cooper was actually an intelligence officer, and he's produced documents that substantiate that. So here you have someone who actually was on the briefing team for the commander of the Pacific Fleet, saying that, during that time, he came across documents that talked about these diplomatic meetings, that talked about the negotiations that happened, that talked about agreements being reached in the Greada Treaty. So, their testimonies and the fact that there are multiple eyewitness testimonies saying that they had access to these briefing documents or that they were present on bases. I mean, there are people who were actually physically present at Edwards Air Force Base and Holloman Air Force Base who saw parts of or saw aspects of these meetings. So that's the basis of the evidence that this really did happen.
Let's go back a little bit here. How much was Dwight Eisenhower aware of extraterrestrials coming to Earth? Was this a brand new subject for him, or was this something even before he decided to run for president that he was well aware of?
Yes, Eisenhower was definitely aware of this. The Second World War, Eisenhower was the commander of the European Allied forces, and there were UFO sightings, Foo Fighter sightings, and so these were things that Eisenhower was getting briefings on in terms of, what threat did they pose to the Allied plans to conquer Germany. And, there were also the German flying saucer projects that Eisenhower was being briefed about. And then immediately after the Second World War, Eisenhower he filled a number of positions. One of them, he became the chief of staff for the U.S. Army, and he held that position in June of 1947 during the Roswell crash, and he was very aware of the Roswell crash. And there's some documents that actually refer to Eisenhower being briefed about the Roswell crash. This is it's called the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit Report. It's one of the famed majestic documents that Dr. Robert Wood and his son Ryan Wood have gone to great efforts to authenticate. And so that basically talked about Eisenhower being briefed. And then you have the 1952 briefing document, the Eisenhower briefing document, that again is a majestic document that has also been authenticated by a number of researchers, the Wood team, and also Stanton Friedman and a number of others believe that the Eisenhower briefing document is genuine. So Eisenhower had been briefed both during the Second World War, immediately after the Second World War, during the Roswell crash when he was Army Chief of Staff, and then when he became president, he was briefed again when he was president-elect about the extraterrestrial phenomenon. So that way, when he became president, I believe it was January 20 of 1953, when he formally was inaugurated, he had already been briefed, and then he was ready to start making policy.
At this time, did he know that out at Area 51 there was some sort of talk going on, about UFO aircraft and studies about this, or did that happen well after into his presidency?
Well, Area 51, the official history is that it was only in the mid-1950s that Area 51 was established. It involved the CIA working with the Lockheed Corporation and basically find a suitable area for the CIA to work with Lockheed Martin to come up with a new generation of spy planes, which would be the Cover Project. And that in addition to that Cover Project, which was really all about developing supersonic aircraft that could be used for espionage over the Soviet Union and China, that in addition to that, they had a more highly classified program also located in the vicinity of Area 51. Well, basically, there's two locations on Area 51 geographically that have these classified programs occurring. One is that the Groom Lake facility, which is where the U-2 and the SR-71 and other later spy plane craft have been developed for the CIA by Lockheed. And nearby, you had the S4 facility at the Papoose Lake, and that's where they basically took the craft that had been recovered from Germany that had been recovered during the Second World War. They had relocated it to the United States. First, I believe that craft went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio for study, and then once Area 51 had been developed, then they took it over to Area 51, and that craft, the flying saucers, went into the S4 facility for further study, and also crashed extraterrestrial craft went to the S4 facility as well. So at Area 51 in the mid-1950s, this is during Eisenhower's early in his first term, you had that facility at Area 51 developed where you had both Nazi flying saucers that had been retrieved from the Second World War and also crashed extraterrestrial craft that had been retrieved in the United States and elsewhere and taken to S4 for study.
Do you believe that the Germans, the Nazi Germans under Hitler, were in contact with extraterrestrials during the World War?
Definitely, yes. I mean, that has been something that a lot of people have talked about for a number of years. There are stories about crashed flying saucers in Germany and in fascist Italy. And only the last, I think it was 5 years ago, a number of documents emerged. These were official fascist-era documents confirming that flying saucers had been, a flying saucer craft had been retrieved in Italy, and that later on, as a result of the agreements, Germany began to have access to that, and that Germany and Italy were collaborating in flying saucer research. We've had a number of documents like that have emerged. There were some KGB files that were released after the collapse of the Soviet Union by a Bulgarian scientist by the name of Vladimir Tuzinski, and he got his hands on a number of Nazi SS files that showed the different flying saucer craft that had been developed in Nazi Germany. There was a series of craft, and that and the documents that were released showed the specifications of the different craft, the different models, showed how many had been developed, how many had been how many tests were arranged, and how successful they were. So these are also documents that are available. And then at the end of 2015, there was the emergence of William Tompkins, who says that he actually worked for the U.S. Navy during the Second World War, and that he was part of these debriefings of nearly 30 Navy spies that had been embedded in different German aerospace companies, and that these Navy spies reported back to Naval Air Station San Diego and told about the different flying saucer projects that the Germans had been developing, and that they also talked about an alliance that the Germans had reached with not one but two different extraterrestrial groups. That there seemed to be different extraterrestrial groups that had been involved in helping the Germans develop their flying saucers, dating as far back as the early 1920s, and then especially under Hitler, where things seemed to accelerate, and so this was something that William Tompkins said that was revealed by the Navy spies. So Germany had been helped by extraterrestrials in different ways in coming up with their different flying saucer prototypes. And so this was something that the Allied powers were very aware of. And there are a number of majestic documents that describe the decision that was made during the Second World War, that unlike Hitler, who seemed to really believe that putting resources into developing these flying saucer technologies was going to be strategically the winning move for the war, under President Roosevelt and his science advisor Vannevar Bush, the decision was made not to put significant resources into understanding and reverse engineering these captured craft and the intelligence that the Allied powers were getting, but to instead concentrate on winning the war by using conventional technologies and developing the atomic bomb. And that ultimately proved to be successful, that the Allies under Roosevelt came up with the correct strategic decision in terms of how to deal with these kinds of futuristic technologies. But the Germans gambled under Hitler to be able to, not only understand these, but to reverse engineer them, and then finally weaponize these flying saucers for the war effort. And even though they got very close, and apparently in early 1945, they were able to begin operationalize some of these flying saucers in the war effort, both to attack the tanks and to attack the bombers and the fighters from the Allied powers. The Germans just didn't have enough of them to make any kind of decisive, to turn the war around, and so then you have the kind of the collapse of Germany, and them secretly exfiltrating as much as they could out of Germany to South America and Antarctica.
Was it ever documented how Hitler apparently got in touch with these extraterrestrial species?
Well, that's a difficult one to substantiate in terms of documenting that. I mean, what we have is information, according to different whistleblowers, that firstly, Germany, during the Weimar Republic years, that's in the 1920s, had established contact with a human-looking group of extraterrestrials from Aldebaran, and that the Germans began to develop some of the first flying saucer prototypes in the 1920s and the early 1930s. But then, in 1933, Hitler came to power, and he basically, by 1934, had essentially decided that he would have the Nazi SS take charge of all of these flying saucer projects. And apparently, at some point, the extraterrestrials made contact with Hitler. This was something that William Tompkins says that the Navy spies referred to, that they referred to agreements that had been reached between Hitler and a particular group of extraterrestrials that are, basically reptilian extraterrestrials, that these were the ones that humanoid physiologically, 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, and so forth, but had reptilian skin and reptilian eyes and were physically, much taller, roughly 7 foot tall, much heavier than typical humans, that agreements had been reached with these beings and that they were helping the Germans during the Second World War, and agreements had been reached between Hitler and them. Now, how can this be documented? All we have so far are the testimonies of people like William Tompkins. A lot of the kind of stories about Maria Orsic. We have another whistleblower, Corey Good, who's pretty controversial, but still I find him to be very credible. He says that he had access to briefing documents and that these briefing documents talked about Germany under Hitler having reached agreements with extraterrestrials, and that the extraterrestrials helped the Germans in developing their flying saucer technologies.
Back to this side of the story, then, when the United States brought the Rocketeers and the people designing the rockets and the Vril over from Germany, were they brought into the whole idea of extraterrestrials? Were they brought into to talk about what they knew about the secret program with any extraterrestrial species?
As far as I could tell, there was some knowledge of this. Hermann Oberth, who was basically is acknowledged as the father of German rocketry, he said that the Germans had been helped by the people of other worlds. I mean, those I'm paraphrasing, but Hermann Oberth acknowledged that the extraterrestrials did help the Germans, and Werner von Braun also made similar statements. So, the Germans that were brought over to the United States under Operation Paperclip, some of them, not all of them, but some of them, were aware that they had been helped by these extraterrestrials during the war in developing some of these futuristic technologies. Now, the thing was, though, that Hermann Oberth and Werner von Braun, Kurt de Buss, Walter Dornberger, many of these paperclip scientists, they were experts in rocketry. And so, they were developing the V1, the V2, and when they were brought over to the US, they helped develop rockets for the American military, and then eventually for NASA. But the principles of rocketry, while you're trying to get objects into space, that is very different to the flying saucer technologies, which didn't use rocket propulsion or liquid fuel as a propellant. They used anti-gravity technologies. They used torsion field physics and different energy kind of generating technologies to be able to propel their flying saucers out into space. And it appears, from my research, that essentially, with the collapse of Germany at the end of the Second World War, the Nazis, when they realized that the writing was on the wall, that they were going to lose the war, the last few months of 1944 and the early months of 1945, they were moving as much equipment and manpower and capital, money, as they could out of Germany to South America and down into Antarctica, because that was the last redoubt. That was the final redoubt. That was the place that the Germans had, from 1939, been quietly building up, because they, through the German Navy, had been able to locate vast underwater resources in Antarctica, where they could build these out to create large bases. And as the war effort looked darker and darker for the Germans, they just moved more and more equipment and men down there. But what they moved down there were their successful models. So they moved all of their successful flying saucer technologies, their most brilliant scientists, down to South America, down to Antarctica, and the ones that were left behind were working on either they were working on flying saucer technologies that weren't successful. So you have people like Rudolf Schreiber, Giuseppe Belluzzo, Mies, and other scientists that were working on flying saucers in Germany that tried to utilize propulsion, kind of more propulsion, jet propulsion technologies for powering flying saucers, but these were unsuccessful. And of course, you had the rocket scientists, but the rocket scientists, they weren't working on torsion field physics. They weren't working on anti-gravity. So the programs in Antarctica and South America didn't need them. So these were the ones that the American military and the British and the Russians got, and so the ones that they got weren't necessarily up to speed on the extraterrestrial assistance that had been given to the Germans in developing flying saucer technologies. But nevertheless, von Braun and Hermann Oberth knew some of it.
When President Eisenhower finally started realizing that this was entirely true, this was something that they were going to have to deal with, how did he go about keeping this entire process away from Congress and away from his fellow political leaders in order to secure the most deepest secrecy known to man up to this point?
Well, I think it was truly a decision made on national security grounds, and and I think it's important to keep in mind that there was an expedition sent down to Antarctica, 1946, 1947, Operation High Jump, under Admiral Byrd, where basically 3 naval task forces totaling 4,000 military personnel converged on Antarctica to find the German bases there and to basically take control of the bases and eliminate the German threat, because they weren't sure just how much of a threat the Germans were out of Antarctica, but that because the Germans had the additional time to finally develop kind of offensive laser weaponry for their flying saucers, by the time the U.S. Navy had gotten down to Antarctica, it was too late. The Germans not only had developed successful flying saucers, but they had also weaponized them. And so they were able to easily fend off Operation High Jump. And so that meant that when Eisenhower became president in 1952, he was aware of, one thing was that the Germans had successfully established themselves in Antarctica, that the Germans were being helped by extraterrestrials in Antarctica, and thirdly, that the Germans and extraterrestrials were doing overflights of the U.S. And this was one of the problems that the U.S. had, was who was flying these flying saucers? Was it extraterrestrials, or was it Germans, or was it a combination of both? And these were all questions that both Truman and Eisenhower struggled with. And then you had, in 1952, you had the extraordinary Washington flyover, where over successive weekends in July of 1940, 1952, President Truman was in power at the time. You had fleets of flying saucers flying over Washington, D.C. And these were cited by thousands of witnesses. And there were also radar trackings, and these flying saucers were. They tried to intercept them with Navy jets at the time, but they couldn't do it. And so Eisenhower was faced with the dilemma that, these craft, who are they? Are they Nazis from Antarctica? Are they extraterrestrial craft? And according to different whistleblowers, I've mentioned Bill Tompkins, Corey Good. Another whistleblower is Clark McClelland, who is another very credible whistleblower. He worked for NASA for 34 years, and he worked for NASA during the Apollo space program, and he worked out of the Kennedy Space Center and actually got to meet with a lot of the German scientists, Kurt de Bruce, who was the director of the Kennedy Space Center, and also Werner von Braun, who headed up the Marshall Flight Center. And basically he says, Clark McClelland says that according to the German scientists, that the flying saucers that flew over Washington, D.C. were Nazi craft out of Antarctica. And so if that's true, then put yourself in the position of President Eisenhower in 1952, 53. He becomes president, he gets voted in, becomes president in January 1953. So now he's got this really complicated situation confronting him, that not only are extraterrestrials real, but they've struck agreement with the Germans in Antarctica, that the Germans in Antarctica, with extraterrestrial assistance, have developed flying saucer technologies using advanced propulsion systems, using advanced weapon systems like laser cannons, that the Germans had been able to successfully develop kind of space-time displacement technologies. And I think Eisenhower and his national security team realized that they couldn't do anything, that they couldn't fight the Germans. They couldn't fight the extraterrestrials. The technologies were just too advanced. So I think this was the basis by which Eisenhower realized that the deal, that there would have to be meetings, that there would have to be negotiations, and eventually deals struck. And that this would all have to be done secretly because, ultimately the United States or Britain or the Soviet Union, none of the leading statesmen anywhere wanted to fess up and say that, we didn't win the Second World War after all. Some of the Germans sat down there into Antarctica, and because of agreements they had reached with extraterrestrials, they now have all these advanced technologies, and we can't do a damn thing about it. So they decided to just keep it all secret.
When these aliens, if we can call them that, or extraterrestrial beings, or off-worlders, whatever the politically correct name is on that, space people, as we call them here in Canada, due to our politically correct Prime Minister, I'm wondering, how did they communicate with Eisenhower? Did they ask to speak with him directly, or did they end up, having to go through a chain of command before they were able to get their message to the president? How did that come about?
I believe it went through the chain of command, that there had been some communication protocol established, and that as a result of that communication protocol, the first meeting had been scheduled for Edwards Air Force Base, and that was the first meeting occurred on February 20 of 1954, and that's when President Eisenhower traveled to Edwards Air Force Base. The cover story was that he was holidaying in Palm Springs, California, and that he and then went missing for an evening. It supposedly had a tooth problem. That was the cover story, but in fact what had happened was that he flew over from Palm Springs. He flew to Edwards Air Force Base and had his first direct physical encounter with the extraterrestrials. And so, this was a meeting that was planned well in advance because Eisenhower was accompanied by a delegation, a wise men's delegation comprising leading industrialists, bankers, and a religious figure of the time, as well as his national security team, that all went there. So this was all done in advance. So this was a meeting where the communication had all occurred beforehand, so Eisenhower could make plans to be down in Southern California before the appointed meeting, and that's when the first meeting occurred. So I believe that the communications had been established through the chain of command, and that was for the 1954 meeting. In 1955, there was another meeting, and this one was at Holloman Air Force Base, and once again, Eisenhower secretly traveled down to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and he had a meeting with extraterrestrials, but it appeared to be a different group of extraterrestrials, and this group of extraterrestrials appeared to be ones working with the German Antarctica operation. And in fact, according to Clark McClellan, there were Germans that were on that craft that landed at Holloman Air Force Base in February of 1955, and that Eisenhower, when he went onto that flying saucer, not only did he meet with extraterrestrials, but he was meeting with Germans that were working with the extraterrestrials. Again, that was arranged in advance, and that meant that all of the communications went through various communication protocols because there were different groups, and negotiations were being conducted, and so with the negotiation process, often, what happens in formal international diplomacy is you first have your diplomat kind of like working out a schedule, working out issues to be discussed, what the agenda is, and that's all done in advance. And then when the leaders come together, then they kind of like work out the fine details and then see if they can reach agreement or not. So I believe something like that happened for both the Edwards Air Force Base meeting and for the Holloman Air Force Base meeting, and that both of those required quite a lot of advanced preparation and negotiation or communication between the extraterrestrials and the U.S. national security system.
When he first met with these leaders and explained to them that he was going to be taking them to Muroc Airfield, because that's the first one, did he explain to them what was going on, or was everybody kept in secret until the meeting happened?
Okay, so Muroc Airfield, that's Edwards Air Force Base. It was renamed Edwards Air Force Base. Now, Eisenhower, he went there. He had his national security team with him, so they were aware of it. But of course, that was very compartmentalized. Only people with need-to-know access would know that Eisenhower was meeting with extraterrestrials at Edwards Air Force Base to discuss some kind of an agreement with the extraterrestrials. And so basically this was something that virtually, I think, no one in the U.S. Congress would have known. Very few people in Congress, if at all, would have known about this. Possibly a few people like Vice President Nixon may have known about it. But really, this kind of information was very compartmentalized. And, other than maybe Nixon and Eisenhower's national security team, the Secretary of Defense, Nelson Rockefeller, who was also a prominent official in the Eisenhower administration. So you would have had a kind of small circle of people that would have known about the meeting. And then there would have been a kind of a larger group that would have known aspects of the meeting. For example, there was one military policeman, Charles Suggs, whose job it was to basically, be a sentry to the hangar where one of the extraterrestrial craft were being held and where Eisenhower would go in. And so his job was to just make sure no one who didn't have proper authorization would go into that hangar. And he was aware of the flying saucer that was there, but he didn't know what Eisenhower's role was or what was occurring there. There were other people that talked about aspects of that 1954 meeting. Probably the most famous is a researcher by the name of Lade Mead, who talked about a briefing he received by one of the VIP people that were part of the Wise Man group that actually accompanied Eisenhower in the meeting with the extraterrestrials. And he described the way in which the extraterrestrials came forward, began to communicate, and how he described how for a lot of the national security officials there, it was like, their jaws dropped, because it was like, suddenly what had been rumor was now official. It was real that, we had made contact with extraterrestrials with these incredibly advanced technologies, and that the world was going to change dramatically because of that. So you had those kinds of eyewitness reports from people like Lade Mead talking about one of the attendees at that meeting. So yes, there were a small number of people that were familiar with Eisenhower's encounter with the extraterrestrials, but it really didn't go too far beyond that small circle, and it was kept very compartmentalized so that even people heading different congressional committees wouldn't have known about it.
We only have about 3 minutes here before we have to go to our first break of the night. How did these aliens communicate with their own species up in space if they really had no craft or communication devices? Because I think that's important, Dr. Salla, to figure out how these meetings started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Well, I have to go on what different people who have had contact with the beings have said. They said that the primary mode of communication was telepathic, that people would just hear the voice of the extraterrestrial in their head. That was the primary form of communication. But also there was radio communication as well, that the extraterrestrials did know how to communicate through radio. And this goes back to Nikola Tesla and Guglielmo Marconi, because they said in the early 1900s that they had established radio communications with extraterrestrials. And that, in fact, I mentioned at the very beginning this Defense Intelligence Agency document that was leaked last year, that dated from 1987. it actually referred to Nikola Tesla and Marconi and said that they had actually established radio communication with the extraterrestrials. So radio communication has been used with extraterrestrials dating back to Nikola Tesla and Giuliano Marconi. So by the time Eisenhower was in power, radio communications was still something that could be used to establish contact with the extraterrestrials.
And quickly, is this where Valiant Thor got involved, or is that just a hypothetical story?
Well, it's interesting. I have tried to validate that story. Certainly, Frank Stranger's, he had a very interesting background, and he, as a preacher and law enforcement official, you would think that he had a lot of credibility behind him, and he said that it really did happen. We have photographs of Valiant Thor that were...
You know what? I hate to cut you off right there, but we are going to step out for our first break of the night. Dr. Michael Salla is with us tonight. We are talking about the Greada Treaty. We are going to be here one more hour with Dr. Salla talking about the treaty. A lot of information to get into hour number 2. Hour 3, we're opening up the phone lines to you. I want to know what you think about this treaty. Is it real? Is it hogwash? Is it sci-fi? We will learn more coming up from Dr. Michael Salla on hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio right after this.
Hello, SOR listeners. Lorian Fenton here. Let me ask you, now that disclosure's happened, what does it mean for ufology? For answers, join us at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th. Keynote speakers Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address the current disclosure agenda. Dave Scott, yes, you're Dave Scott, and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien encounters. Get your tickets at caufocon.com. That's caufocon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia, brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
To the dawn.
We are lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to SpacedOutRadio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4Cop. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries, so tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, it is the final Friday of February already, which means we are going to have the SOR Paranormal Roundtable going on, where we're going to bring in some friends, we're going to debate some topics. They're not going to know what we're talking about. They're all coming in cold. It's a fun night. We're going to wrap up the month that was. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Newnan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We are also live on Periscope.tv. We are on Facebook at what is our Facebook page? Spaced Out Radio Show. Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with us live during the show as well. And our YouTube channel is youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio if you want to hear any of our archives. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Verisimilitude. Verisimilitude is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so on Twitter. Well, I've already said that. Darn it. I'm just all over the place tonight. I get an ice cap brought here by the wife from Tim Hortons, and all of a sudden I'm all over the place, just everywhere. Anyhow, if you want to go to our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can read The Encounter online or watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, and so much more. Tonight, we are talking about probably one of the most important topics we need to figure out in the field of ufology, and that is the Greada Treaty. This treaty was apparently signed by President Eisenhower with extraterrestrials, trading humans and animals for technology. Now, we have a gentleman who is highly scholared in this topic. He has written a very great dissertation at excuse me, at exopolitics.com or .org. That is Dr. Michael Salla, who is with us tonight. Dr. Salla, welcome back.
Thanks, Dave.
Sorry about that. My throat's all of a sudden getting a little scratchy here, but that's okay. We're going to continue on here. Dr. Salla, when President Eisenhower met with these first set of extraterrestrials, do we know who he was dealing with? Because there is so much speculation in regards to whom he was dealing with, whether it was the Greys, some sort of Nordic humanoid type being. Who did he meet with the first time?
The first time, as far as I can determine, he met with a kind of human-looking Nordic group of extraterrestrials at Muroc or Edwards Air Force Base. And they were very concerned about the United States moving forward with this, the development of thermonuclear weapons, because on March 1st of 1954, this was essentially 10 days, or well, less than 10 days, kind of like 9 days after the meeting with Eisenhower. The United States tested its first nuclear bomb, its first thermonuclear bomb, its hydrogen bomb, which was approximately, I believe it was the Ivy Mike test, and it was roughly 15 megatons, which was around 1,000 times the size of the atomic bomb dropped on, I think it was Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Both of them were in that range of 15 to 20 kilotons. So, you've got 15 to 20 kilotons being dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And then you've got the Ivy Mike test on March 1st, 1954, that involved a 15 megaton thermonuclear weapon, and the Nordic extraterrestrials basically wanted the United States not to develop thermonuclear weapons because they believed that this would basically, create catastrophe and possibly lead to a third world war. And in exchange for not developing thermonuclear weapons, they would basically help the United States with kind of advice and spiritual technology or spiritual wisdom, if you like. Now, I think you can imagine how Eisenhower's national security advisors would have reacted to that. I think that they didn't want to, be basically given a Space Brothers philosophy in exchange for giving up nuclear or thermonuclear weapons. So they'd send them down. And so that set the stage for the next meeting the following year at Holloman Air Force Base, where basically a deal had been struck with the Germans and their extraterrestrial allies in Antarctica, where the United States would basically sign an agreement and begin getting the advanced technology so that they could develop their future space programs while keeping their atomic weapons and their hydrogen bomb weapons.
So basically this first group that he met with said, to hell with the nukes, we'll help you out, but you cannot go there.
That's right. I mean, they had the philosophy that our level of ethics, or our kind of like level of consciousness, if you like, was not suitable for the kinds of advanced technologies that they had. That we really needed to work as a civilization on being more ethical and evolving our consciousness and so forth. And then they were willing to share their technologies, but they said that you need to do this, but an important step in doing that is to abandon this mad quest for developing thermonuclear weapons. That's nonsense, or that's just going to lead to disaster, and don't do it. And but Eisenhower, and from what I know, and I've spoken with Laura Eisenhower, who, as you mentioned earlier, is the great-granddaughter of Dwight Eisenhower, and she says that basically Eisenhower wanted to reach an agreement with the Nordics, but his national security team just were adamantly opposed. That, for them it was all about developing, new generations of weapons and kind of aerospace technologies, and the idea that if they kind of gave up their, thermonuclear weapons and worked on developing higher ethics and higher consciousness, that eventually they would be given kind of spirit, they would eventually be given more advanced technologies, that they didn't believe in that at all. And so they essentially decided that it was better to go with the same groups of extraterrestrials that had reached agreements with the Germans. Because the Germans had been through a similar process, beforehand. The Germans went through the same process, where originally they were contacted by kind of human-looking Nordics that were more interested in raising consciousness and developing ethics, and that's how it began in Germany during the Weimar Republic under Maria Orsic and other German secret societies. They were into that. They were into the idea of developing consciousness and being able to align your kind of core energies with the kind of real force or chi or cosmic force, whatever you want to call it. This was something that German secret societies were very familiar with, and they wanted to do that. But when Hitler came to power, he was very materialistic and definitely didn't share that kind of that concern of raising consciousness. He was more about developing super weapons to win wars, and so eventually this kind of human-looking Nordic group distanced themselves from the Germans, and the other group, the reptilians, came in and basically gave Hitler everything he wanted to win the war. But even that wasn't enough, and so now the United States under Eisenhower, they were going through their own kind of negotiation process with the same groups. First the Nordics reached out, and the US kind of like tried to negotiate with them, but then when they realized that they'd have to give up their most powerful weapons, they decided, no, well, we'll just go along and negotiate with the same groups that the Germans negotiated with. But, the problem there was that the Germans and the reptilians were allies. So that meant that, by the time Eisenhower met with the delegation at Holloman Air Force Base, he was meeting he wasn't just meeting extraterrestrials. He was meeting representatives of a German extraterrestrial alliance that was based out of Antarctica and South America. And so, that gives us a better idea of what Eisenhower was doing. But definitely he understood that the price of an agreement in getting these advanced technologies that the extraterrestrials had was also reaching an agreement with the Germans out of Antarctica. And the Germans in Antarctica, they had their wish list as well. And so they got what they wanted, and the U.S. Didn't quite get everything they wanted. They got a little bit of what they wanted, but not nearly as much as what the Germans got out of the agreement.
Do you think then that he kind of ruined his chances on getting a lot of things that could help mankind on Earth by not taking this agreement?
I think he did what appeared rational to him. What made sense. That there was a lot of dissent amongst the national security complex. Whether to work with the Nordics or whether to work with the reptilians, and what basically happened was that there was a kind of like a split in the U.S. national security system, whereby formerly you had the U.S. Army and the U.S. Air Force working with reptilians, working with the Germans out of Antarctica, and so the agreements were reached so that the primary interface was the Air Force, which is why the meetings happened at Air Force facilities. You had the meetings at Edwards Air Force Base, and then you had a meeting at Holloman Air Force Base. Well, then, when you think about it, it's like, well, why hold the meetings at Air Force facilities? Because after all, the Air Force was the youngest military service. The older service was the Navy, and the Navy had its own naval air stations, places where you could have held diplomatic meetings as well. So why weren't these meetings held there? And I think the answer we get is that Eisenhower and the national security system came up with this kind of dual-track strategy, where on the one hand they would collaborate with the Germans and their extraterrestrial allies out of Antarctica, the Greys and the reptilians, and that this would be done primarily through the U.S. Air Force, and the Air Force hoped to get the kind of know-how and the understanding for developing some of these flying saucer technologies that they had seen the Germans and the extraterrestrials fly in. So that was one strategy, or one track, and the other track would be a more secretive program that would be developed by the Navy, but the Navy wouldn't be working with the Germans and the reptilians. The Navy would be working with the group of the Nordics, the human-looking extraterrestrials. So you actually had, within the U.S. national security system, you had this kind of bifurcation, if you like, or a dual-track strategy, and the hope was that the U.S. would get the best from both, that they could get some technology from the Nordics through the Navy, and they could get technology through the Air Force that were working with the reptilians and the Germans in Antarctica. So that, when you look at it from our perspective, it kind of makes sense. That's probably what any rational person would have done at the time. You would have understood that while there are two different groups here, and we have a big problem which group to go with, there are risks and benefits with both groups. So why don't we get part of our national security system going with one group and another part going with the other group, and we'll keep the two kind of like on separate tracks. And that's exactly what happened. You had the Navy developing its own space program over the years with the benefit of help from the Nordics, and you had the Air Force developing their own program with the help of the Germans and the reptilians and the Greys.
When he declined this deal with these extraterrestrials, did he expect to get another deal again coming through? Did he expect to have further meetings with other species to try and work out some sort of agreement?
Well, I don't know how many different extraterrestrial groups Eisenhower learned about at that time. I mean, I know now that we know that there are roughly 40 different extraterrestrial groups that are interacting with humanity at different levels, and that and we actually our genetics comprise the characteristics of 22 extraterrestrial races. That our genetics are composite, or we're a hybrid of 22 different races. So that we can understand some of the racial diversity on the planet by virtue of different extraterrestrial groups seeding their genetics into one group more than another. So the Japanese and the Chinese, the Asians and the Mongols, will have a slightly different group of extraterrestrials that have provided the genetics for them, as opposed to, say, the Northern Europeans. And that again will be different to, say, people from the Americas, from the especially South America or Central America, the Mayans and so forth. So we've had different extraterrestrial groups that have been kind of interfacing with us for a long time historically, and we're aware of about 40 of these now. But during Eisenhower's time, it's hard to say exactly how many he knew were there, but he certainly was aware of a kind of human-looking Nordic group that he met with at Edwards Air Force Base. Now, how many kind of human-looking Nordics did that particular group represent? Was it one, or was it a federation? We're not quite sure. We don't have enough information for that. But I think when it comes to his meeting at Holman Air Force Base in 1955, I think we can be more confident that he did meet with a kind of smaller group of extraterrestrials, typically associated with the Germans, which are the reptilians and the Greys. So I think we can kind of be confident that Eisenhower, based on the information he had at the time, really felt that the deal that he reached with this group at Holman Air Force Base, this kind of German reptilian grey group, was the best deal that the US could get at the time. And certainly his national security team supported that.
So how did it come up then about trading humans and animals for technology?
Well, I think this was one of those aspects of the agreement which to us, looks horrendous. But, we look at it from the perspective of, say, the Germans, because the Germans were using slave labor, throughout the Second World War, and even in Antarctica, they were still using slave labor. So they were very comfortable with just abducting people, groups of people, and just cutting them off to be used as slave labor. So the Germans were very comfortable with this. And so when agreements were reached with Eisenhower, this was just one of those aspects of the agreements, that people were going to be abducted. Now, I think when it came to the United States, I think Eisenhower made an agreement where people who were abducted would be returned back to their place of abduction and have their memories wiped, so that way security could be maintained. That, in other words, the agreement didn't allow for Americans to be taken down to Antarctica to be used as slave labor. But Americans who signed on to these agreements or kind of volunteered to join these projects these joint German-American projects, off-planet projects, that some of these people ended up, virtually as slave labor, but they did it voluntarily. But in terms of what Eisenhower did, I think that the agreements were worded in such a way that he felt that this was acceptable, that the extraterrestrials that had signed onto the Greada agreement, that as far as the extraterrestrials were concerned, when they were abducting people, that people would return unharmed to their homes. And I think Eisenhower and certainly his national security officials felt that this was acceptable, and that what they were getting in return in terms of advanced technologies kind of like outweighed the ethical concerns about having your people abducted and used in genetic experiments and then returned with their memories wiped. That this was a kind of an acceptable thing to do, which I think just showed that the Nordics were right, that ethically we had a lot of work to do.
Did he expect it to get out of hand the way it was? Because all of a sudden people started having experiences, many which continue today, and a lot of people would say, this is out of hand, we need to know what's going on.
I think what you had in the 1950s and the 1960s was a lot of contact cases, a lot of people having encounters with these kind of human-looking extraterrestrials. And many of these meetings were really very positive and very respectful. And, this is where you have people like George Adamski, Howard Menger, Orfeo Angelucci, a whole litany of contactees in the 1950s who all described these life-changing experiences with these beautiful human-looking extraterrestrials. So I think these were the same extraterrestrials that Eisenhower had met at Edwards Air Force Base that he had turned down. But those extraterrestrials now went to Plan B, which was to basically help raise human consciousness by interacting with the local population. So then in the 1970s and 1980s, I think we have, as a result of the agreement Eisenhower had reached with the Greys, that eventually you had a lot of people coming forward saying that they'd been abducted by these short, 3 foot, 4 foot tall Grey humanoids who were doing all these kinds of genetic experiments on them. And so that's when it really did start to get out of hand.
Did Eisenhower realize the impact that this would have on humanity, potentially, with people being taken against their will?
I think that was a concern that was probably pretty low down the list of priorities. I think Eisenhower and his national security advisors, I think that they were, as far as the strategic situation confronting them, was that you had the Germans in Antarctica with an advanced space fleets working with a particular group of extraterrestrials that were quite aggressive and militaristic. And that if the United States wasn't careful, that you could either have a third world war, or you could have this German space program literally kind of infiltrating and taking over the United States. And in fact, that seems to have been what had happened to a certain extent. Not completely, but there have been a number of writers who have talked about the Fourth Reich, and we certainly see with Operation Paperclip, the number of German scientists that came into the United States and were given senior positions in the aerospace industry, in major corporations. I mean, and a lot of these scientists often came in straight from Germany and were given security clearances, high-level security clearances almost immediately. Now, Whereas American scientists, they would have to wait a year or something to get their security clearance. And so this was this was a big puzzle to everyone. But for those in the know, basically this was evidence that an agreement had been reached and that the Germans that were coming in were part of this agreement, with the German Extraterrestrial Alliance out of Antarctica. And Eisenhower, I think, understood the national security implications of all of this, that if the United States didn't get technology quickly, that eventually it could be overwhelmed by this kind of fifth column of Germans in the United States collaborating with the Germans and the extraterrestrials out of Antarctica, and that the US would be covertly taken over. And so I think that this was something that Eisenhower and his people were prioritizing, and for them having a few people or a few thousand people abducted secretly and experimented on and then returned with their memories wiped, I think that they probably thought that was kind of like an acceptable price to pay, even though I'm certain they wouldn't have been happy with it. But I think that I think Eisenhower, being a five-star general, a former five-star general, he would have understood that when you're fighting a war, you're going to have casualties. And I think he would have seen people being abducted as kind of being casualties of this kind of undeclared war, or this kind of like kind of chess match, if you like, between the US and the German Extraterrestrial Alliance.
Almost like, there is collateral damage. No matter what you do in war, there is collateral damage. And, at first, though, Dr. Salla, I had heard, and I'm wondering how true this is, that they had agreed to a number, and the number that pops into my head is something like 65,000 people that they could do this to. And eventually it got more and more without Eisenhower or anybody in the know knowing about this. Did you ever hear anything about that as well?
Well, I know William Cooper talked about this, and he, I can't remember him actually giving a specific number, but he did say that agreements had been reached and that the extraterrestrials broke their word, that they were abducting many, many more times than what the agreements had been agreed to. And certainly this was something that appeared to be part of the agreement, that the number of people that would be abducted, that was being tracked. There's another whistleblower, Dan Sherman, who was worked with the Air Force. He was an electronic warfare specialist, and he worked with the NSA. He was trained to work with a covert operation at the NSA, and he described while he was at the NSA that he was given a special computer terminal, and that his job was to communicate with a particular grey extraterrestrial, or several of them, and he was supposed to monitor the number of people being abducted, that the greys had to report on who they were abducting. And so this was the way in which the national security establishment tried to track the number of people being abducted. But as you mentioned, the number abducted was many more than the agreement stipulated, and estimates go as high as several million Americans having been abducted over the years.
I want to get to some questions from our audience here because they are building up, and then we'll get more into how it is affecting today. I want to start off with Gail's question here, and she is asking, Dr. Salla, how was Eisenhower able to get this with the absence of ratification by the Senate?
Well, that's an important question. Basically, the chief executive or the president can sign something called an executive agreement, which is an unratified treaty. It's under the U.S. Laws. You can actually have the chief executive doing one of these executive agreements until such time as the agreement is ratified by Congress. It is still applied. It still applies. So, for example, like you had, I think it was the SALT II agreement between the Soviet Union and the United States, where both the Soviets and I think it was Reagan, or could have been Bush, agreed to limit the number of different classes of nuclear weapons, and that the agreement wasn't ratified by the U.S. Senate, but still the U.S. and the Soviets abided by the terms of the agreement, because you had the chief executives signing on, and that this is something that is recognized under the under international diplomacy. Because as far as international diplomacy is concerned, ratification is something that is a domestic issue. But as far as international law is concerned, as long as you have the chief executives of two powers signing an agreement that is abided by the kind of like bureaucracy, then you have an executive agreement, and this is what Eisenhower did.
Another question here from Catalina. She is asking, what was the Russians' role in all of this? Did they get anything out of it?
Not really. The Russians never trusted the Germans. I mean, the Russians and the Germans were mortal enemies, obviously. During the Second World War, actually, many Germans really questioned why the United States, really questioned why Hitler was fighting Britain and the United States at all. They really viewed Britain and the United States as their ally against the Soviet Union. And in fact, many Germans were aghast when Hitler declared war against the United States, because after Pearl Harbor, what was it, December 7, 1941, the next day, the United States Congress voted almost unanimously to go to war against Imperial Japan. Well, just a few days after that, Hitler declared war on the United States. And a lot of Germans were shocked by that, because they thought that was totally unnecessary, because they really felt that the United States and Britain would be potential future allies, because the natural enemy were the Soviets, were the Soviet Union. So basically, what this meant was that when the Germans went down to Antarctica, and eventually they realized that they would strike a deal with the Americans, with Britain, because you look at Britain. I mean, the British royal family. I mean, they're German. They're Saxe-Coburg. And many Germans had immigrated to the United States, and early on there were calls to make German the second official language, and actually I think this was part of what the U.S. The congressional delegation during the revolution, after the Revolutionary War, they were debating making German a second language. So the Germans in Antarctica, and especially during the Second World War, really felt that the war against the United States and Britain was wrong, that it was misplaced, and that it was Hitler's folly. But that the Soviets were the natural enemy, and so the Soviet Union never trusted the Germans, and so they didn't make the deals with the Germans in Antarctica, and because the Soviet Union had this kind of very extreme totalitarian form of communism under Stalin. Basically, even the human-looking extraterrestrials didn't want to have anything to do with Stalin, and so the Russians or the Soviets didn't have access to this kind of level of technology that the Germans had in Antarctica, and that the U.S. military-industrial complex was starting to get. So through these agreements, the U.S. really established quite a big technological gap with with the Russians. But it's only been since Putin came to power in the year 2000 that the Russians have actually caught up quite a bit.
Let's go to Darren's question. Is there a line of direct communication with any alien group right now that you know of?
Well, I mean, a line of communication, what you have is the U.S. Air Force has been working with a number of extraterrestrial groups for decades. They have facilities at Nellis Air Force Base in particular, where they have a group of extraterrestrials called the Tall Whites down there. One of the whistleblowers who has come forward to talk about that is Charles Hall, who wrote a series of books called Millennial Hospitality, and he talked at length about the agreements that had been reached between the Air Force and this group of tall white extraterrestrials. Another whistleblower, Bill Newhouse, talked about grey extraterrestrials being consultants to the U.S. Air Force advanced technology projects. So right up until today, there have been unbroken lines of communication between the U.S. Air Force space program and the extraterrestrial groups that they've been working with. And similarly with the U.S. Navy, they've been working with this Nordic extraterrestrial group that William Tompkins has talked extensively about in his book, Selected by Extraterrestrials. There's currently there is a very well-established lines of communication with multiple extraterrestrial groups in the United States, involving the Air Force and the Navy, and then you have another group within the intelligence community, the NSA in particular. It's called the Advanced Contact Intelligence Organization, ACIO, and so they also are in communication. So there are multiple agencies in the United States that have ongoing communications with extraterrestrials.
A lot of people have been mentioning tonight in the chat rooms whether or not we signed an agreement where we were declaring a loss of sorts in regards to, dealing with extraterrestrials. For instance, a document which spelled out our surrender. Does that make any sense to you?
I don't think it would have been viewed as a surrender or presented as a surrender. I think the way in which the negotiations happened, because the United States in 1955 under Eisenhower, I mean, they still had a lot of cards to play, even though the Germans in Antarctica had superior technologies and had an extraterrestrial alliance that had helped them build flying saucer craft. The United States, they had thermonuclear weapons. They had ballistic missiles that they could use. Even though the Germans could have created a lot of destruction against the U.S., the U.S. could still have probably fought a war against the Germans in Antarctica, and they possibly could have won that war, or at least just because of their overwhelming number of resources and population. I mean, the United States had back in the 1950s. I'm not sure of the exact number, but we're probably talking at least 150 million people, and the Germans at most would have had a few 100,000 in Antarctica. And even though they had advanced technologies, I don't think they would have done too well if there was full-scale war. But I think Eisenhower and his national security team realized that, going to war against the Germans in Antarctica might prove to be inconclusive, because after all, they're buried under 2 miles of ice, and even if you detonate kind of nuclear weapons over the ice sheets there, I mean, how can a hydrogen bomb penetrate 2 miles of ice? So I think at the end of the day, it was a genuine negotiation, and while in some ways it appeared to be a kind of a negotiated surrender, I think Eisenhower and his national security team probably felt that, they could outsmart the Germans, and the Germans felt the same way, that they could outsmart the Americans. And at the end of the day, I think probably the Germans succeeded.
We're going to take 2 more questions from our audience, then I want to hit you up on what's happening today with everything. Kevin out of Texas is asking, do you believe, Dr. Salla, that the Jason Society wrote the proposals for Eisenhower?
The Jason Society, there's the Jason Society, which is a group of scientists that have been working on advanced technology projects. They were set up during the Eisenhower administration, and some of them kind of like helped with some of the negotiations. But I think a lot of the Jason Society, they were primarily scientists whose skill was in understanding advanced physics and building kind of like all sorts of advanced weapons technologies. The group that would have been most relevant in the negotiations for Eisenhower would have been the Council on Foreign Relations. Their executive committee in particular, that was run by people like David Rockefeller, Henry Kissinger was involved in that. These are the people that would have put together the kind of negotiating ideas that I think Eisenhower would have used. But, the Council of Foreign Relations rather than the Jason Society would have helped Eisenhower with the actual negotiations.
And Joe is asking, Dr. Salla, what do you know about Operation High Jump when the U.S. fleet went into Antarctica after World War II?
Okay, well, Operation High Jump is a very important operation to understand, because it really was the first time that the U.S. military appreciated just how advanced the German space program had become, because William Tompkins was providing all this intelligence from Navy spies during the Second World War. And the way he explained it, he said that a lot of the senior Navy people didn't believe it, that they didn't believe that the Germans had developed these advanced technologies, flying saucer technologies, and that they'd been helped by extraterrestrials. They thought it was disinformation. And so it was only with Operation High Jump that they could be sure that, in fact, it was true, that the Germans did escape to Antarctica with these futuristic weapons and flying saucers, and had sufficiently developed these to pose a significant threat to the United States. So Operation High Jump really marked the point when the U.S. national security system really paid attention to what the Germans were doing in Antarctica.
Since we only have about 6 minutes left with you tonight, and I apologize to our audience because we are almost out of time, and there's just so much more to do. I would love to invite you back on the show in the near future to go over this again so we can continue, Dr. Salla.
I'm happy to do that.
Well, thank you so much. When you look at what is happening today with disclosure, or the soft disclosure that is happening with the To the Stars campaign and Robert Bigelow and the Pentagon, everything which I'm pretty sure you're very up to date with, do you look at this as something that had to happen or something that is being forced to happen then?
I think there are a number of things happening in the background which is forcing disclosure. You have the leaks. You have the unprecedented number of leakers now releasing information. And it's only a matter of time when the documents concerning of these classified extraterrestrial programs are released. That it's only a matter of time before the German space program out of Antarctica is revealed. And in fact, Antarctica is a place that's literally heating up. There's the Western Antarctic ice shelf is melting, and as it melts, you're having a lot of things that have been under the ice for thousands of years suddenly being revealed. And so they're discovering ancient artifacts. They've discovered a flash-frozen civilization under the Antarctic ice. And because you've got, I think it's 55 different nations down there with permanent stations down in Antarctica, or at least summer stations down there, it means that there's a lot of nations are now poking around under the ice and discovering things. So this is also driving the disclosure process. And I think finally you have a lot of white hats within the U.S. military who want this information to come out because they understand that while things remain hidden and secret, a lot of injustices occur, a lot of abuses occur, and that this actually does impact on our ability to collectively understand some of the most advanced technologies. So, it's almost like we've come full circle. When Eisenhower met with the Nordic extraterrestrials in 1952 at Edwards Air Force Base, and they offered to first help us develop ethically before we would get advanced technologies. We chose to go down the path of developing advanced technologies, and now we've reached that point. At least the national security apparatus has reached that point, and they've understood that if you haven't developed the sufficient kind of ethical qualities and developed your consciousness collectively to a certain degree, then you're not going to be able to understand the most advanced technologies. The most advanced extraterrestrial technologies do require a higher consciousness. And this was something that the Germans understood from the very beginning, which is why the Germans got so far ahead, because they understood that consciousness and technology had to go side by side, that they were partners. You couldn't sacrifice one for the other. And it took a while for the U.S. military-industrial complex to reach that similar understanding. But I think now they have reached that.
So with the way this whole disclosure movement that is going on right now then, Dr. Salla, do you think they are taking it the way they are because of secrets like the Greada Treaty that they are trying to keep secret so that way they can hold on to what they have learned over the last 70 years?
I think that they're going to try to first reveal some of the advanced technologies, which is what the To the Stars Academy is doing. You would have noticed that it's all about advanced technologies. That they're releasing film footage, official Pentagon film footage of UFOs. They're talking about developing kind of like these anti-gravity propulsion systems. They're talking about making some of the black world technology available to the white world and getting investors to develop this. So I think that this is one particular disclosure narrative that is being pushed, through Tom DeLonge's To the Stars Academy, just some advanced technologies. But I think there's enough people that are aware of these deeper issues, of secret space programs, of the Air Force and the Navy having deep space capabilities, aware of extraterrestrial civilizations, that I think that enough people are aware of this, that any kind of limited disclosure that just tries to get us to get excited over some new kind of aerospace technologies, that's not going to be enough to satisfy people. So I think people are going to want a lot more disclosure than what we are seeing from the To the Stars Academy. So I'm kind of very interested in seeing what happens in the near future with documents being leaked, And apparently, this QAnon, who is really becoming very popular in the United States, that might be another venue where you can have some of this advanced technology and extraterrestrial life information being released as well.
And we got about 1 minute here for you, Doc. Where can people go to find your dissertation that you have written on this if they want to read up more on the Greada Treaty?
Sure. Okay, well, there's a number of books I've written. Firstly, they can go to my exopolitics.org website, and there they'll find some articles. So you've got some articles there where I talk about the Greada Treaty. You can just type it into the search box or just do a Google search and it'll take you there. If you want, if readers, listeners want to go deeper into it, then I recommend that they get my books, or one of the books in particular is called The Galactic Diplomacy. And so that's a book that goes into detail into Eisenhower's meetings and the Greada Treaty. And so you can just buy that through Amazon or through my website. But definitely, there's a lot of information that people can get from the website. So I want to thank you again, Dave, for having me on the show.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And
thank you. You know what? We look forward to doing it again with you, Dr. Salla. What a pleasure it is for you to educate us on this. And like I said, I would love to do this again with you and continue this conversation because I think we only scratched the tip of the iceberg here.
Wonderful. I look forward to it.
All right. Dr. Michael Salla, tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His website, once again, exopolitics.org. Check it out. It's a fantastic site. Grab his books as well, because this is an important topic. If you're into ufology, you need to learn about the Greada Treaty. Coming up in hour number 3, we have open lines for you. 1-702-302-4556 is the phone number. 1-702-302-4556. I want to know what you think. The treaty real? Fake? You don't know? Do you care? Call us after the break.
Hello, SOR listeners. Lorian Fenton here. Let me ask you, now that disclosure's happened, what does it mean for ufology? For answers, join us at UFOCon 2018 in South San Francisco, California, March 23rd through 25th. Keynote speakers Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, and Melinda Leslie address the current disclosure agenda. Dave Scott, yes, you're Dave Scott, and Lynn Buchanan tell of amazing alien encounters. Get your tickets at caufocon.com. That's caufocon.com.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
We're lighting the void on Saturday nights on Spaced Out Radio. Hey, this is Joe Roop, and I'm hanging out in SOR headquarters every Saturday night, bringing you the latest news when it comes to the weird and strange. Bigfoot, occult, UFOs, ghosts, and everything in between, I got you covered. You can tune in to spacedoutradio.com starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time. Come travel into the void with us on Spaced Out Saturdays.
Not ready for bed on Saturday night? Right after Spaced Out Saturdays, hop on over to S4 with Corey Ruiz and me, Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal. With S4, there are no limits to what we try and uncover. From government conspiracies to helping clean up the paranormal, no topic is safe on S4. We get to the heart of the matter, of the subjects you want to learn more about. So tune in on S4 starting at midnight Pacific, 3 a.m. Eastern, only on spacedoutradio.com.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Hi there. I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with the UFO-COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
This is Eric Markham, news editor for the Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter Online. We have put together a great team of writers and journalists from all over the world to bring you top-quality paranormal stories, from alien encounters to the latest conspiracies. You won't find any of that fake news here. True stories and top-notch reporting as we look to bring these experiences to the mainstream. The Encounter Online, only at spacedoutradio.com.
Do you want to know the truth? Do UFOs exist? Are aliens real? Are the governments hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO seekers, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow along with us as we journey across the United States, visiting UFO hotspots and alien hotspots, trying to document the UFO phenomenon. Catch us on Spaced Out Radio every third Monday of the month as we discuss Area 51, UFOs, and more. And also, don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories.
It's Cosmic Sundays with me, Elizabeth Anglin, in Cosmic Passport. Let me take you down a 3-hour spiritual journey where we will get into everything from ET contact to Psychic Sundays. It's a journey of listening and learning together with some of the best professionals in their fields. You can tune in to Cosmic Passport at spacedoutradio.com every Sunday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
Welcome back to the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Great to have you with us. Tomorrow night on the program, it's the SOR Paranormal Roundtable. We'd love to have you join us, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time at spacedoutradio.com, where I'm going to bring in some friends. We're going to talk about the month that was in the paranormal field. We'd love for you to join us once again. We want to welcome in everyone listening in on WQEE 99 Rock the Key down in Noonan, Georgia, home of The Walking Dead. We are also live as well on the United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM in New Orleans, and over 160 countries around the world. We're live on The Fringe FM, and if you're listening in on Revolution Radio, remember the Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to revolution.radio and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Verisimilitude. Verisimilitude is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, Space Travelers, as Bill sets a password each and every night right here on the mighty SOR. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, we are all over the place. We're on Periscope.tv live every Monday through Friday night. We are also on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect live with us during the show as well. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. That's where we store our archives, and our website, spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for $5 a month. Rock out to some Bumblefoot. Shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. You can also read up on the encounter online and watch great videos from UFO Seekers, Contact TV, rock out to some Bumblefoot, and so much more at spacedoutradio.com. So tonight in hour number 3, I want to know what you guys think. I want to know what all of you think of the Greada Treaty. Do you think it's real? Do you think it's fake? Do you think it's just a bunch of baloney? Or do you think there's something to it? Now, if you're an experiencer where you have been taken or had ET contact, I think it's very important. I want to hear your opinion on this. Dr. Michael Salla was with us for the first 2 hours of this show, talking about the magnitude that people don't understand. He is a firm believer in his studies that this Greada Treaty actually happened. And I have to tell you, in my own personal research, which I'm going to tell you right now is not very scientific, it's just for my own benefit, everything that I have learned about the field of ufology always seems to come back to this potential Greada Treaty. And it's funny, I remember a couple years ago when I had Laura Eisenhower on the show, and she admitted that she believed the treaty was absolute fact. Yet the remainder of her family did not feel comfortable in talking about what her great-grandfather had discussed. Do you take it at face value, thinking that the Eisenhowers are hiding something, and that maybe Laura, being the rebel of the crew, is the one who has decided to take that torch and run with it, maybe against her family's wishes? You have to wonder. You literally have to wonder. I mean, we're not talking about a son or a daughter or even a grandson or a daughter. We are talking about a great-granddaughter who never met Ike. Or if she did, she was very, very young. Now, I'm a believer that something happened. I think there is just way too much in technological advancement between 1952 and 1960 that there had to be something going on. I mean, think about it. Coming out of the World War II, we were just learning about rocketry. We were just learning about jet engines. Yes, the Germans had introduced a jet fighter in World War II. In 1954, I believe, 55, that's when the Bell X-1, maybe it was 57, pardon me, where the Bell X-1 finally cracked the sound barrier after years of trying. Yet just 2 years later, the SR-71 was being developed to go Mach 3.3. And not just that, but the technology in the cameras where an aircraft going that fast could read a license plate clearly at 80,000+ feet going that speed. You know, a lot of people will say, well, that's just advancement. That's just the way it goes. But what if there was something more to this? And if you're an experiencer where you have been taken, or you have family members who have said they have been taken, what does this say for them? Especially if they have had some of the horrendous, heinous things that have happened. And this goes way beyond Whitley Strieber's anal probing. Way beyond. Call me and let me know. I want to hear what you have to say. 1-702-302-4556 is the number. 1-702-302-4556. And if you're in any of our chat rooms following us, either on Revolution.radio, Periscope, Spreaker, Twitter, at hashtag Spaced Out Radio, or in the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook, I want to hear from you. I want to know what you think. This is an important topic on whether or not it actually happened. Now, I can tell you, as many of you know, I'm very open that I'm an experiencer. I have been taken. I've had good experiences, and I've had not so good experiences. So, where does it lead to? Where does it lead to? Does it lead back to the Greada Treaty? And if you're American, how do you feel that President Eisenhower signed this treaty that wasn't ratified by Congress or the Senate? How do you feel that he knew in an act of war, which this apparently was, according to Dr. Michael Salla, that he understood the idea of collateral damage being American citizens as well as farm animals, animals in general, in exchange for technology, weaponry. Because as Dr. Salla said, the first deal he turned down. He turned down the first deal. Right? That was from a Nordic-type group that said, look, we'll help you get to the promised land in life. We'll give you everything you need. Just stop with the nuclear weapons. Those are destructive. You don't need them. Your people don't need them. Yet Eisenhower, according to Salla, wanted to sign that deal. He wanted to sign it. But his advisors around him said, no, don't do that. That's bad. That is bad. You don't want to be doing that. We need these nuclear weapons. We're in the Cold War now against the Russians, man. We need to protect America. We need to protect our soil and our citizens and our allies with nuclear weapons. So that was out. And according to Dr. Salla, these Nordic-type beings pulled the deal. Said, snooze, you lose. Pretty much. Let's go to the phone lines. Area code 423. Who am I speaking with tonight?
Hey, Dave. This is Tommy. Good evening there. Enjoyed your show tonight.
Tommy, thank you so much. How you doing?
Oh, just fine. I really like Michael Salla.
Thank
followed
you.
him for several years. Followed him for several years. I like to hear him back on the show again. He's, serious fellow. And
yes, he is.
Wouldn't be going down this rabbit hole for he's not the ego attention kind of guy. He's serious. So yeah, I don't see why people would find this such a stretch, because we all know the government does a lot of things behind the people's back, and they find ways to do things, and they get away with it. So when I hear something, I knew about this and read William Cooper's information on this, I don't know, 15 years ago or something, and I didn't have a problem with it whatsoever. Everything weird that I've heard along the way, I have no problem with it whatsoever. What I have a problem with, I don't have a problem, but what trips my mind is all the people that can't wrap their minds around all the sci-fi fiction weird stuff when Hollywood has already put it out, and they have to put it out in fiction to tell you the truth. They can do it all. There is nothing, absolutely nothing that you could think of they cannot do. They've been to every planet. I wanted to talk with Michael Salla that they are trading with 900, maybe more. I don't have the number. I don't have the document, but whatever. 900 different extraterrestrial civilizations with their secret space technology. They're building on other planets with people they have abducted in slave colonies from Earth. And, just a whole, they have, who was it? Alfred Labramont Weber said, I heard him a week or two ago. He was having an interview and said that all past presidents, I don't know how far back, they have time travel technology and they go pre-identify all the presidents. And it's no mistake. This is so methodically our lives planned, in my view, that this matrix is no joke. It is fiction. It is not who we are. We're not allowed to be who we are. And the ones running the planet, the world from off planet, have maintained this and are controlling our lives in a narrative with the mind control and the dumbing down since birth. So, I feel we're just not going to get the evidence and the proof. Nobody is to satisfy what they want to know that they can't answer for themselves. If they could just see everything in reverse, where everything is that we don't want to believe is real, and what we think we know and what we do believe has all been pushed on us, and it's all false. And so that really helps me to expand to know that the infinite universe will allow all of this. It's all going on over our noses, whatever. And NASA, they black out the space behind their photographs so you can't see the beauty and the wonder. So you think that's all there is, nothing going on. William Cooper said that NASA is simply a cover program for to make people think that it's going to take a long time to get anywhere when they're already there and back a million times. And it makes total sense that you cannot, like this disclosure happening here, this confirmation, it could be disclosure in a way, and unsatisfying to most with so many questions and controversy. Was it real? Was it live? Was it Memorex? To me, in my mind, it was good because it's all leading, like you said a minute ago, it's all leading to something. It's leading to an ascension event. It would not be happening otherwise, because the ones that are running the planet do not want anything good for us whatsoever. So there is a good alliance in the Pentagon, in the military, like Dr. Salla was saying,
right,
that is helping push this to exposure slowly so it does not shock and disrupt the everyday life of going to work and the psychology of the very volatile, fragile psychology of the human being to take on so much expansion at one time. So while it seems slow, it's going to be quick because there's a timeline that has to be met because of this huge event in our near future, in our lifetime.
Right, Tommy. I want to ask you: have you been taken before?
No, not that I know of. I don't want to be.
I don't know if you have a choice.
Yeah, it could be. I feel we're all barcoded though from birth, running a program, and when you die, you're taken. Their memory is wiped, and you're sent back through the birth canal as if you're on a secret mission on a prison planet. And of course, there's no secret mission on a prison planet. Heaven and the afterlife is all part of the programming. God is simply as I heard it put very well, simply a very well shared electron. Everybody is God. Everything is a part of God. We all have this God-like nature, creators, co-creators, and it's up to us individually. But with the hive mentality and the mind control, people are following everyone, their leaders and authority figures around, because controllers don't want people to find their essence so that it could escape the prison planet and raise their vibration to evolve out of it. And it is a group migration. It's not just one that's going to, it's all of us. So that's why we have to unify and have harmony and come together. And that's the struggle right now because of the divisiveness and dissension. And we're making it, though. We're going to. I'm eternally optimistic. I have no doubt. It's just, I'm like in a hurry.
I get you.
Get out of here.
I get you. Tommy, Tommy, thank you so much for calling in. I appreciate that, my friend.
Certainly, thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Interesting points there from Tommy. You have to wonder, is this all part of one big scheme? Is this all one giant learning test so we can become prisoners on other planets? I don't know. I really don't. But, I think the main thing is, we do know people are being taken. We do know this is happening. We do know that this is a part of what is coming. 1-702-302-4556 is your phone number to call on in if you want to talk about the Greada Treaty. 1-702-302-4556. We want to hear from you. If you've been taken, I want to know what you think. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions, as we go back to what I was saying before Tommy called in, the Nordics that, according to Dr. Salla, that wanted to make a deal with us, wanted to take care of humanity. That deal fell through because, once again, didn't want to give up nuclear weapons. So according to Dr. Salla, there was a meeting a month later. And this was some sort of draconian, reptilian-type gray being. Maybe a distant relative of Carl? I don't know. Who came on in and said, yeah, we'll just take a few humans. Take a few humans here and there, a few animals here and there. Get some anal probing going in there. Casualties, as Dr. Salla called the people being taken. Casualties. That's what's scary. Catalina is asking, but why didn't the common humans have a say in the matter, Dave? Well, if we go by Dr. Michael Salla, we have to remember that this is top secret. This is way above top secret. If you believe in the Greada Treaty, this is way above top secret. Way above. that people in Congress and the Senate in the United States had no idea this is even going on. And if some alien is dangling a bunch of technology that is going to push you way ahead of the game, why not? Why not? If you're worried about the Russians sending their Bear bombers into the United States, you worry about that. Stalin at the time, that guy was psychotic. Look at how many of his own people he killed. Something like 36 million or something like that. For what? Having an opinion. Not shaving on Stalin Day or whatever it may be. The guy was a monster. Absolute monster. We talk about Hitler being a monster. Stalin was a monster. And you have to wonder about the fears on this planet. Yes, you could worry about what was happening in the stars. But you also have to worry about what's happening here on Earth as well. That's quite one hell of a conundrum. It is a conundrum. Because if you don't have the strength and the capability to protect your own and to protect your allies from the big Russian bear at the time, you have to do something. And if you take Butch Witkowski's stat that he got from his FBI source, and we'll ask Butch again on Monday about this, because he'll be on Monday the 26th, and I will ask him. His FBI source said every year there is something like 1.3 million people in the United States that go missing. And when they whittle down the numbers, taking away murders, kidnappings, people running away, suicides, it comes down to a number. The FBI has whittled it down to a number of 65,000 people that is unaccounted for. They can't figure it out. There's no clues, nothing. Are these the people who get taken every year? Is that the magic number? And if it is, that's a lot of people annually. 65,000 times 70 years. Where do they go? Are they on some alien's dinner plate? Are they up on Mars, the moon, some other planet? Are they in a zoo in some other planet as a show me piece? That would be interesting. Right? So, I mean, you have to look at it. Eisenhower was pretty much in a damned if you do, damned if you don't position, if you believe that this situation happened. Once again, there is not a lot of proof that it went on. There's not a lot of proof that it went on. We got to take a lot of people's words on that. Can you trust those words? Some say you can. Others say, no, it's not enough. Where's the documentation? I want to see the paperwork. And I don't blame them. I would love to see the paperwork on this. I really would. But you can't blame Eisenhower. The technology that they got out of it, if you believe this happened, and if it indeed did happen, it launched an entire program. Think about it. Mid-50s, we can't even get to Mach 1. 14, 15 years later, we're sending people to the moon. When in history has there been that quick of a turnaround in technology? Hell, at the beginning of the century, we were just learning about airplanes and how to fly with the Wright brothers. And their first flight didn't even go the length of a C-5 Galaxy's wingspan. I love Kevin's comment. He goes, was I not good enough or too valuable to this planet? I'll go with B. Kevin, it's your beard. It's your beard that saved you. And Catalina, we were just thinking the exact same thing at the same time. Kevin's beard saved him. It is a high-quality beard. High-quality beard. If you want to call on in, 1-702-302-4556. I want to hear from you. If you have been taken or you are just questioning this treaty, tell me why you question it. What are your questions? Let's talk about it. 1-702-302-4556 is your phone number to call on in to talk about the Greada Treaty. And you know what? If you look at, this is another point I want to bring up. If you look at what has happened today, fast forward from the Eisenhower time to the time with disclosure right now. All right? The time with disclosure right now. We can say this. It's very, very strange to me the way we see this entire disclosure movement going on right now, getting involved in this whole ball of confusion. When it first came out, aliens were a part of it. UFOs were a part of it. Technology not of this world was a part of it. But they separated aliens from UFOs. So you haven't heard once anybody from the To the Stars campaign talking about aliens. Haven't heard it whatsoever. They separate it. Now they're separating aliens from unknown or not aliens, but UFOs from unknown technology. And you have to wonder, why be so secretive about it? Disclosure should be telling us the entire fact of what is going on. Should it not? That's the way I look at it. To me, disclosure isn't about AATIPs. Isn't about that whatsoever. It's about UFOs. It's about aliens. I need to know as an experiencer, I want to know, what does the government know about this? And they are not letting us know. They are not letting us know. They want to humanize everything, which I guess is relatively good science. But for those who have already experienced, they already know what's going on. So why humanize it? What are you trying to hide? Reading between the lines, I look at it as something that is being hidden. Now, if I bring it back towards history, that part of history, what I see happening is I see them trying to segregate these two fields. Why? Aliens on one side, UFOs on the other. Why? Because in my theory, and it's my theory and my thought only, so don't put any weight into this. I'm just throwing this out there because I have a platform in order to do it. All right? I have a platform to do it. I think the reason why they are doing it the way they are right now, with so many spooks in regards to the To the Stars campaign, is because they know there's a lot of secrets being covered up. And they don't want those government secrets to come out. So this is a way for them to control the message on how to get the message out there. So for instance, if you take the fighter pilot of the FA-18 where he says that was technology out of this world. It was from out of this world. Who's flying that craft? And if nobody is flying that craft, where did it come from? If he's saying it's from out of this world and it's not from here, we can't prove that, I know. Okay, but if it's not from here, where did it come from? somebody or something had to be on that craft. And I think what's happened, if we read between the lines, like I said, I think the United States especially has had too many secrets through their knowledge and learning from years after years of UFOs that they don't want to give up to people some of these topics, i.e., people who've been taken. I don't think the government wants to know that they know about it. Because if Dr. Salla is right, there was a list kept on who got taken. All right? There's a list of people who've got taken. So the government knows who gets taken, if that treaty is true. So you have the people who've been taken, because I would like to know up here if the Canadian government knows that I've been taken, besides me announcing it for the last 3 years. The technology that they have been hiding. Maybe it goes back to Nikola Tesla. Out of that, is there any type of technology that could help the common citizen? I'll give you an example. If this technology is correct, and we have been able to create it, why the hell are we still flying on airliners that it takes 6 hours to fly from Seattle to New York? Or 5.5 hours from Vancouver to Toronto? Why are we using that antiquated technology? Can't be for profit, because we've seen so many airlines go bust. Why do we seen it? Michael is asking in Periscope, have you seen the video of the craft skimming the ocean down by San Diego, Dave? No, I have not. I will look for that one. Gail is asking, can you tell us what is going on in Antarctica? No, I have not. Cell phones. Right? There's all sorts of technology. Right? All sorts of technology they could be using. If you believe in the Aurora program, the SR program out of Area 51, and Michael Schratt, they have an aircraft that flies at hypersonic speed that can go around the world in 3 hours. 3 to 4 hours. What the hell are we doing with Boeing and Airbus? If that technology exists. What are we doing with it? Right? Why are we not getting off the ground with it? What are they holding back? Do they know something about aliens that they're trying to cause fear in everybody? To fear these extraterrestrials. If you look at Hollywood over the last 20 years, there hasn't been a lot of movies that state that aliens are here for the good. Video games, the same way. Tom DeLonge going on Joe Rogan saying that we got to put nuclear missiles and weaponry up in space to protect us from the extraterrestrial threat. Where did that come from? There's a lot of secrets that are being protected. And I think that's why this round of disclosure needs to be questioned. It needs to be questioned a lot. Because if the Greada Treaty is true, right? If it's true, what are they screwing on us? What are they bending us over for? The public has a right to know. But if they do it the way they are doing it right now, they have full control. They have full control of the media, which we've already discussed on this show numerous times. They have control of the events. They have control of the video footage. They have control of the knowledge. They have control of it all. How fair is that to you and me? How fair is that to every experiencer who's been taken against their will? Whether it's by benevolent extraterrestrials or malevolent extraterrestrials. Kevin brings up a good question. He goes, why are we still paying for electricity? Exactly. Shareholders. Profiteering. You could say the same thing about oil and gas. Seriously. You could say the same thing for all of that. That's just the way it is. You know, we need to be able to figure out those secrets. And like I said, in my own personal research, and I highly recommend everybody to do their own. Maybe you'll come to the same conclusion, maybe you won't. It really, really is up to you, whatever you decide that you want to figure out, whatever it is you want to believe, whatever it is that you feel is right. But this is where we have to read between the lines and try and figure out what is going on. Right? Because if those Nordic people, or extraterrestrials, or star people, according to Justin Trudeau, were going to give us what we needed on this planet, and then pulled the deal, why didn't they come back to the table? It's all about negotiation. Or were Eisenhower's hands tied, if this is real? Catalina asks, why can't we make our own treaty with aliens? It's a loaded question. I'm not trying to, and don't take that the wrong way, Catalina, when I say that. That's a loaded question. How do you do that? You know, they're not walking door to door like the Seventh-day Adventists or the Jehovah's Witness, saying, hello, we would like to teach you about alien life out in outer space. How do you do that? Maybe in that treaty, they're not allowed to do that. Maybe they're not allowed. That's something we have to think about. Right? That's something we need to think about. Now, some people who have had that contact, they've found more spiritual enlightenment. There are people around who say they're channeling aliens or they are in contact with extraterrestrial species, and they've found some sort of enlightenment behind it. They really have. Then there's people out there, I'll throw myself in that group, that wish it would continue a little bit more. I'm stuck here wondering why Carl hasn't showed up a little bit more often. Or that first set of beings that Samantha Mowat and I saw that haven't been back to me since. I'd like to know. I would love to talk to them. I'd love to go for a ride. I'm sure a lot of you would too if you knew it was benevolent. Why wouldn't you? Jeff brings up a good comment on hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. He says, if suddenly we had all the answers, technological advances, cures to every illness, the money and power the governments are used to, would dry up. Absolutely. It would create globalism. Sorry, I thought I had to sneeze. I did not. It held back. I won. But it would create some sort of equality, you know, instead of this communistic value where everybody is equal, but some are just a little more equal than others. But it's about staying ahead. It's about militarization. It's the military-industrial complex, coincidentally, that President Eisenhower, on his way out of office, said and forewarned everybody about. And look where we are, 65 years later. A lifetime later. So this is what you need to worry about. Tripp says, who's more happier and connected with Mother Earth? People in houses, mansions, or tribes living off the land? Absolutely. But can you use that question as a fair comparison? Because tribes living off the land, they don't know any better. That's what they've been taught. Their children don't go to school. Right? But what's that teaching right now for many? You know? So you have to wonder, is that really the right question to ask? We're going to go to the thought of the day here momentarily. Hi, Dan. Welcome. But you have to wonder, is there more to the Greada Treaty than what we know? Is there more to what is going on than what we know? You can find out by doing your own research, coming to your own conclusion. And if you buy it, great. Tell me what you find. I want to know. If you don't buy into it, tell me as well. What don't you buy into it? Hey, Jeff on Twitter at #SpacedOutRadio. You're a little early for the carnival rides. A little early. Thought of the Dave right now. Thought of the Dave happens every night at this time, where every day I ask a question on my Facebook page and we bring in audience participation to answer what your thoughts in regards to the question of the day, or the thought of the day is. So we got quite some interesting responses today in the question, do you believe the Greada Treaty, Eisenhower and aliens took place? And explain. Now, there were a number of people who got into this, whether or not, you know, they're right. This is all personal opinion on whether it happened. So we'll get to some of those answers right now. Keith stated, I've never seen any hard evidence that this exists. So I'm leaning towards no, but I am willing to be schooled on the subject. Well, you need to read up on Dr. Michael Salla and others who have proclaimed that there is some sort of reality towards this treaty. Is it even a treaty, or are we just calling it a treaty? We really don't know. Now, Shar says, really can't imagine anyone saying it would be okay to take humans for experiments. I have heard his granddaughter, obviously Laura Eisenhower. But if this were true, why would any of our Air Force chase UFOs? Why would anyone think they were so benevolent? That is crazy. Could humans be so stupid, so brainwashed? I can't even imagine it. Well, there's a couple of questions in there. First off, if you're a pilot in the Air Force, Shar, you're not going to know this treaty exists. This is above top secret, way above flying an F-18. or an F-15 or an F-22. You're just out there doing the job. Why would anybody think they were so benevolent? I will ask this question. I'll ask a question for a question. Is every human good? Would you put Stalin in the good human category? Hitler? Genghis Khan? ISIS? Taliban? Jeffrey Dahmer? Ted Bundy? Would you put them in the good human category? So to sit there and say that all aliens are bad, I don't believe that for a second. And that isn't a shot. Okay? Don't take that as a shot, Shar, because it's not a shot. But it's easy to love the negative. We see it every day in media. It's easy to love the negative or the story because the rumor is usually a lot more juicier than the truth. I personally do not believe all extraterrestrials are bad. And if this deal is true, maybe they don't have a choice. Maybe they have to play by the guidelines. That's the way you got to look at it. Right? But there is concern that some humans do not have a choice, that it is happening. So I agree with you there. I totally agree with you there. There have been times I've been taken, I didn't want to go. Didn't have a choice, but it happened. The first time I went, I knew that experience was coming. I was prepped for it. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. But I knew it was coming. And you just have to roll with it. Maybe they have rules and guidelines they need to play by. I don't know. I don't know. But to say everything is evil, I think that's, by anybody who thinks that, not just you, Shar, but by anybody who thinks that, I think that's incredibly naive because we do not know. We don't know the purpose. Let's get to Evan's comment. He says, this U.S. reluctant to let them on U.S. soil? Or the U.S. is reluctant to let them on U.S. soil? Who in the hell would stop them? And what about the rest of the Earth's land space? Stories like this become so Americentric, like aliens only care about the U.S. No one mentioned of Russia signing a similar deal with tall Norwegians or reptiles. I'm going with no, it didn't exist. You could tell he's Canadian. Good old Evan. Former work buddy of mine. Peter Robbins says, they don't need to sign treaties with anyone. One of the great abiding myths of ufology. This is true. Why do they need to sign treaties? Why do they need to do that? Right? But on the flip side, maybe there is some sort, we all think it's woo-woo to steal, Mr. Skeptic's term that he loves so much on Twitter. We all think it's woo-woo when we think that there is some sort of interplanetary or intergalactic consortium. Maybe there is that consortium that wants to befriend or invite mankind into the game. But we're too immature right now that they don't think that we could handle what is going on. Because, let's face it, we like to solve things with violence. We're a violent race. Now, I'm sure if you had a bunch of dolphins running this planet, everything would be much better. They're kind of cool. Right? So you have to wonder, is it a galactic rule? Is it some sort of interplanetary or interdimensional or intergalactic treaty that they need to help come on out? Let's get to another comment. David Ross says, everything that people have said at the top is all for me. Okay, way to contribute. Joe Monk says, I signed an agreement that let the aliens take Dave instead of me. That's because they don't want to mess with your hair, Joe. You've got a beautiful mane. They don't want to mess with that. Although, from what I'm hearing is, they have taken you just so they could get hair follicle samples on how to look as beautiful and grow as beautiful hair as you have. And I'm going to stick with that. That's my thought. There we go, Mr. Skeptic. Finally getting a woo out of you. A good Ric Flair woo. Awesome. I needed that. On Twitter, Canadian Joe says, it's impossible to know if this event really took place. It's interesting to speculate about it. Why Eisenhower eventually took the Greys deal. Supposedly other alien races made contact too. Well, if we put this in hockey terms, because you're Canadian, I'm Canadian, I'll put it in a hockey term. Gretzky, the greatest hockey player ever, was going to sign with the Vancouver Canucks. Pat Quinn and Gretzky and his agent had shaken hands on that. And Gretzky said, I'll sign the deal in the morning. George McPhee shows up at Gretzky's hotel room about 12:30 at night when Gretzky is asleep. Wakes him up and says, this deal needs to be signed right now or it's off the table. Gretzky looks at McPhee and says, are you effing serious? True story. And he basically says, in different words, do you know who I am? I gave you my word. And McPhee says, I understand, but ownership wants it signed right now. Gretzky signed the next morning, by the way, with the New York Rangers. So how that ties into ufology is, maybe they said, okay, deal's over, deal's off the table. You guys are too immature, you want to play with these nuclear weapons, we don't want any part of that, deal is off the table. That's the way I think it went down. We got time for one more here. Derek Tyler says, it did take place. It was basically a document which spelled out the terms of our surrender. Well, we heard from Dr. Salla it wasn't a surrender. And David Wenbert says, there are too many separate witnesses and points of data corroborating his meetings with ETs for us to have any reason to doubt it. Did he meet with them twice and reach no agreement, treaty, or terms? I don't think that's the way he would operate. He would have tried to define the terms of the relationship if indeed there weren't already being dictated by the extraterrestrials themselves. But since the word Greada doesn't exist, I agree with those who say that it's really called the Greada Treaty, and that our common parlance of Greada within ufology is just a typo someone made that has forgotten, that's gotten propagated throughout the lore in the last 20 years, carelessly. Interesting indeed. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL rocking in the background with A Little Brother Is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. We thank Mr. B for letting us get our horns up every single night. Tomorrow night on the program, we're bringing in the crew. We're going to be doing the SOR Paranormal Roundtable starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern Time, talking about the month that was in the paranormal. I hope you join us. We'd love to see you here. So it's going to be very, very fun indeed. It always is on the SOR Roundtable. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who is listening in at home, at work, in your cars. Everybody who took part at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio as well. Everybody in Revolution Radio. Everybody going on Periscope.tv. Stick around. We're going to spin some music for a little bit after this. So you could head on over to Periscope.tv/Spaced Out Radio. I'd love to have you there. That includes you, Ozzy Andy. Love to have you there. We want to say thank you to everybody on Spreaker and everybody at the Veterans Club, the SOR Space Travelers on Facebook. Thanks for making this a great show. Thank you for being a part of it, sharing it around, because together, my friends, we own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Have a good one. We'll talk to you in 21 hours from now. Good night.